everybody. So today we are going to discuss about our new chapter, which is Kingdom Plantae. First, we need to understand what plants are. Plants are basically multicellular. These are multicellular, eukaryotic, multicellular, eukaryotic, as well as these are photoautotrophic organisms in which there is a process of photorespiration, which there is a process of photorespiration, and which contain chlorophyll A and B, which contain chlorophyll A and B, as well as they have chlorophyll A and B, which are non-motile, non-motile, as well as they have heteromorphic alternation of generation. These are heteromorphic alternation of generation is present in there. Previously, we studied in Alva lacticus that there was isomorphic alternation of generation. Here, there is a heteromorphic alternation of generation. So, as there is a heteromorphic alternation of generation, it means that both generations, I, the sporophyte and the gametophyte. Sporophyte and gametophyte. Sporophyte is the spore producing generation, gametophyte is the gamete producing generation. Both of these generations will be uh, morphologically as well as physiologically different. So this would be heteromorphic generation, as well as they are oogamous. What does this mean? This means that they will be producing a male sex gamete, male sex cell, which is known as male gamete, which is sperm, and the female gamete, which is known as the egg. Egg is produced single in number. It is haploid. It is non-motile, as well as it is larger in size than male. Male is produced in larger in number, multiple in number, as well as it is haploid, it is motile, it is biflagellated. In many, it is motile, it is biflagellated, it is motile, it is biflagellated, as well as it is haploid, and apart from that, it is smaller in size. And this is known as oogamy. This type of syngamy is known as oogamy. And apart from that, they are also homosporous. What does homosporous mean? It means that when they produce spores in their spore producing generation, sporophyte, these spores are morphologically same. So this is known as homosporous, right? And after that, when it comes to some other conditions, there are certain characteristics of plant which includes high cellulose content, high cellulose content in their cell wall, high cellulose in cell wall, right? As well as these have characteristic that they have formation of some products. Certain products are there. General character we discussed in general characteristics that here there are certain products of plants which includes the primary products. These primary products that are produced by plants are waxy cuticle. They have production of waxy cutin, which is made up of cuticle. Cuticle is basically it is a mixture of lipid polymers as well as waxes, lipid polymers and waxes, and it is being formation of being made up of waxes and lipids. It is insoluble in water, and as it is insoluble, it prevents desiccation. This is an adaptability that it prevents desiccation as well as filters a substantial amount of ultraviolet light, ultraviolet radiation from the sunlight. So it filters the UV rays as well from the sunlight, because we know that if UV rays are uh, you know radiated over the plants, then these ultraviolet radiations can cause mutation within the genetic genomic sequence of the plant, right? So in that case, these filter the UV rays as well, right? And apart from that, uh, these are having some secondary products which are known as lignin, which provide strength to the upright terrestrial plants. Specifically, lignin is strong, but there's another compound known as sporopollenin. It is a type of carotenoid which is stronger than lignin, and that is basically formed of uh, it is basically a type of carotenoid. So it is found on the spores, and as being a covering over spores, it causes to make them resistant and flexible to biodegradation, and resistant to biodegradation, as well as they also prevent the spores from being chewed by grazing animals, from being chewed by grazing animals, and other organisms as well, other organisms. And apart from that, when it comes to some other characteristics, they are having these are photosynthetic, produce their own food by the process of photosynthesis, as well as photorespiration occurs in them as well as they have another characteristic that they have another characteristic as well, that they are having vascular bundles, right? And these vascular bundles are made up of vascular tissues, and these vascular tissues are known as xylem and phloem. Now, why these bundles are important? These bundles are important for the transport of uh, these bundles are important for the transport of water and mineral ions, which is done by xylem, and for the transport of sugar and food, which is in the form of sucrose, which is done by phloem. We are going to discuss that someday in our next chapter about xylem and phloem, their detailed structure. But for now, this is only the introduction. And here they are also having a characteristic that allows them to adapt on land. And then these characteristics include the development of vascular bundles, as well as their body is well differentiated into roots, stem, and leaves. The body is well differentiated into roots, stems, and leaf, as well as there's a woody. They have woody tissues, which is having high deposition of lignin, due to which it causes to have their size increased and greater than smaller non-vascular plants. Smaller non-vascular plants, they have due to this presence of woody tissues, they have size which is greater than non-vascular plants. So vascular plants have a size greater than non-vascular plants, which allows them to adapt on the land conditions as well. Moreover, when it comes to some other characteristics, there is also the alternation of generation, and we are going to discuss that how is it important in terms of uh, you know uh, allowing them to adapt on land in the next video. For now, this is an introduction. Now, when it comes to evolutionary adaptations, plants which were primitive from earlier years, we know that about 3.5 billion years ago, the existence of life occurred on Earth, right? And after that, around 400 million years before, we had primitive plants which were lived in aquatic conditions. Now, around 400 million years ago, these primitive plants started to evolve themselves to grow themselves over the terrestrial conditions, such that they tend to they started to evolve themselves to survive on terrestrial conditions, as a result of which the first plants which were evolved on the land were known as bryophyta, and they had a dominant generation in their alternation of generation, which is known as gametophyte. We're going to discuss why as well, right? So here evolutionary adaptation occurred, and that evolutionary adaptation caused the primitive plants to develop to evolve on land, which was known as the process of evolution of plants. And at that moment, this system of classification in which we study the evolution of plant on the basis of their mode of origin and their structure is known as phylogenetic system of classification, right? Now, when they evolved from the pond to the land, the closest relative of plants were considered as algae. Why? There are certain characteristics similar, such as multicellular. Both of these are multicellular. Both of these are eukaryotic. Both of these are photoautotrophic. Both of these have cellulose in their cell wall. Or not all algae, but only green algae, brown algae, and dinoflagellates. And both plants as well as algae are having both plants as well as algae are having chlorophyll A and B, except dinoflagellates, diatoms, and brown algae. So these were some similar characteristics. While when it comes to uh, the closest relative of plants with algae, then we can consider them as green algae, right? And among green algae, if we were to, further elaborate on it, then specification would be done on algae, which was known as pond algae known as Chara. Chara basically had some similar characteristics with plants, that it had high cellulose content. It had high cellulose content, as well as it basically had uh, process of photorespiration occurring in it, as well as it formed phragmoplast during cell division. High cellulose content, photorespiration occurring in it, phragmoplast was developed during cell division, and they had similar flagellated sperms, similar flagellated sperms and egg, similar reproductory method, similar sperms and eggs, as well as they had some of their mitochondrial and nuclear genes which were matching. Some of the empty DNA and nuclear DNA had their nuclear and mitochondrial genes within the Chara algae matching with the earliest plants which were known as bryophyta. So in that case, these were considered to be as the closest relative of plants which was known as Chara, right? And after that, when it comes to some adaptations of plants, adaptation of plants include first growing of vascular bundles, which led to the development of larger plants, then non-vascular plants, which allowed them to adapt to land conditions, as well as they had development of several. They had a larger size in case of they had a larger size because of well differentiated body, root, stems and leaves, which allowed them to adapt on the land, as well as they had vexicuten, which enabled them to sort of prevent themselves from desiccation, as well as their body, which was made, was quite compact, such that their body was quite compact in hot and dry areas, due to which their body being quite compact in hot and dry areas enabled them to survive on land conditions whenever there was a hot and dry area within their conditions. And apart from that, uh, there are certain characteristics which they adapted, which also involved the development of which also involved the development of several several land adaptations were adapted based on the variation of the species as well, such as hydrophytes and halophytes were, adapted at that moment. But in that case, it was, an environmental adaptation. Moreover, alternation of generation, which is a heteromorphic alternation of generation, was also helpful in providing, uh, a continuous change in the gene, uh, a continuous genetic variability as a result of change in their environment. So in that case, their heteromorphic alternation of generation allowed them to do that in such a manner that whenever we know that gametophyte was produced, gametophyte basically had the haploid production of haploid gametes. Now, the production of these haploid gametes in case of bryophyta would be antheridium and for the male gametes, and archegonium for the female gametes. And actually, these are the structures. Multicellular sex organs are there present within them, within the bryophytes, which includes the archegonium as the male sexual organ, and antheridium as the female sexual organ, right? So the antheridium and archegonium as the male and female sexual organs respectively were basically, you know um, grown on gametophyta, and over them there was the production of gametes inside them, and these gametes in case of bryophyta were known as antherozoids or spermozoids in antheridium, and as the male gametes and female gametes were known as the egg, which was produced inside the archegonium, right? And when these gametes were produced, these were produced through the process of mitosis, because it is alternation of generation, heteromorphic alternation of generation, there was mitosis occurring in them. And of course there would be a sexual reproduction because there is fusion of gametes, right? So uh, as a result of this sexual reproduction occurring, this led to the formation of several gametes. I mean, these gametes when fused were having no process of crossing over occurring within them, as there's mitosis occurring in the gametophyta. So mitosis occurring in gametophyta basically showed no crossing over, which means no genetic variability was observed in mitotic division in order to produce a male and female gametes. But when these male and female gametes were fused together, when these were fused together, they caused to produce a diploid zygote which had the gene or the genomic sequence of male as well as the genomic sequence of the female gamete, due to which it led to a genetic variability, which means that the genetic variability or the genomic sequence which was adapted to live in a changing environment of the female gametophyte, as well as the genetic variability and the genomic sequence which was adapted to live in the genomic sequence of the male gametophyte were both encoded now within the diploid zygote, which was now carried on to the next generation with a stronger generation within it and more resistance against environmental conditions which are developed within the environment, due to which it leads to a stronger generation produced which can adapt to a continuously changing environment. Now when the diploid zygote develops into the embryo, that embryo is multicellular, and of course that occurs through mitosis. Diploid zygote undergoes repetitive mitosis, due to which it causes to produce an embryo, and from that embryo there is arrival of another body, another plant body, which is known as sporophyta, which is diploid generation. Now sporophyta being the diploid generation now will have production of several spores within its special structure, which is known as sporogonium. Sporogonium is the special structure in which there is development of the spores, haploid spores from the spore mother cells, such that when the spore mother cell will now tend to perform meiosis. When a spore mother cell will tend to perform meiosis, it will cause to produce four haploid spores. Each spore mother cell will produce four haploid spores by the process of meiosis, due to which crossing over will occur, and again there would be a genetic variability, and as a result of that genetic variability occurring, this will lead to produce a generation which would be more adapted due to the genetic variability to the continuously changing environment which was occurred in the generation of sporophyte. Let's suppose sporophyte faced some sort of a higher temperature within their generation. So this higher temp the gene to resist this higher temperature was then encoded within the genomic sequence of spore mother cell, which was then further undergone into the genomic sequence of crossing over, due to which as a result of crossing over of spore mother cells through the process of meiosis, it led to the production of a stronger generation which was able to adapt to that high temperature within that generation, right? So in this case, this is how the alternation of generation allowed, several uh, times each and every generation to come out as a stronger generation than the previous one, because of higher genetic variability faced in each generation, due to which it led to the production of a stronger generation each time, which was with more genetic variability to adapt to the continuously changing environment. Now when the haploid spores were spread out, dispersed through wind, these haploid spores now developed once again into the structure gametophytes, right? So in this entire life cycle, it's not a life cycle, it's just an introduction. I'm just giving you an introduction that why alternation of generation is important. Within that alternation of generation, there is only there's no genetic variability during the formation of gametes, because there's mitosis occurring. Otherwise, at other types of uh, uh, you know where genetic other types of reproductive processes such as nuclear fusion, as well as which is nuclear fusion, as well as the meiosis, there is genetic variability, due to which it leads to a stronger generation produced. So in this case, there would be this is how alternation generation is important, as it allows to produce a stronger generation which is adaptable to the changing environment in each time, which is again due to the heteromorphic alternation of generation occurring within them, right? And apart from that, anthridium and archegonium, these are the sexual male and female organs, And one more thing, plants also have their general characteristics as development of male and female multicellular sex organs within them. And apart from that, these were some of the evolutionary adaptations. And that's all about today's video. Hopefully, we'll meet again in another video.